Let's watch some crazy stuff, yo! Hey, wait a minute, Rick. I thought this was a commercial. What's going on? I mean,
Relax, Morty. Don't worry about it. Let's just see where this goes. Oh my God! It's still the commercial.
Jeez, Rick. Oh my God. That's some pretty hardcore stuff. What in the hell?
Yo, what's good, YouTube? It's Zen. We back with another video. Hey, Maru, if you're watching this video and saw that intro at the end, you ain't seen nothing. Anyways, that's besides the point. We back with another video, and guess what we doing? I mean, you clearly read the title. We doing more scary Reddit stories. Now cue that scary ass music. Let go. Guys surrounding our car in the dark. This happened many decades ago, but it still puzzles me to this day. My buddy and I, who were in college at the time, were back in our little hometown for the weekend. That Saturday night, we were driving around, getting high and drinking beer. We were driving around on dark country roads, and it was pitch black that night, overcast with no moon. Anyway, we stopped on a dirt road to take a leak and roll another joint. My buddy, who was driving, left the car running, but turned off the lights. We didn't see any cars or people around us for miles, so my buddy starts rolling the joint, and the overhead light inside the car is on. Then he happens to glance up toward the front of the car, acts startled and flips on the headlights. We look out our car windows and see a whole group of guys around the car. We both yelled, "Oh shit," or some other choice words. He slammed the car in gear, and we hauled ass out of there. Those guys were probably people we knew from the town. I even thought I recognized one of them, but I've always wondered what in the hell they were doing out in the middle of nowhere on a pitch black night without flashlights, apparently on foot. I'm gonna be completely honest. I thought that story was gonna be longer. I just guessed and ran with it, and yeah. Anyways, on to the next story. Followed home from jail. This happened several years ago when I was working in a downtown jail in a large city as a counselor. I worked a weird shift and got off at 2 a.m., so it was obviously dark when I got off work, and most people on the roads were people who just closed down the bars downtown. At this job, I interacted with inmates who were various levels of stable and sober, and sometimes they were released at the same time as I was leaving work. The garage where I parked was a couple blocks away from the jail, so I was cautious walking to my car, but didn't usually have issues. Anyway, this particular night, I got to my car safely and started driving home, about a 25-minute drive. Very quickly after I pulled out of this garage, I noticed a car right behind me, with its high beams on. It followed me through downtown, onto the highway, and then exited at my exit. But I wasn't freaked out though, since I lived off a major road. But then it took every turn I did, and pulled into my apartment complex, right behind me. Well, at this point I'm getting concerned, but it's a big complex, so I just head towards my building. Car is still behind me. I usually back into my reserved parking spot, but this car is so close I literally can't. I pull in forward. The car drives up behind me and stops, blocking me in. At this point I'm scared. I consider calling someone, but all my friends are probably asleep because it's 3 a.m. Calling 911 feels like an overreaction, so I finally dial 911 on my phone, but don't press the call button and step out of my car. A man gets out of the car. He's tall, white, wearing a vest and a fedora. He stares at me for like 10 seconds, says "oh," gets back in his car and drives off. Still one of the weirdest encounters of my life. Cult encounter. No, it's not Scientology. I know you're watching, you fucks. This happened some time ago. I live in a town in Bosnia. One night in July, I was riding a bike when a bearded guy stopped me and started speaking with me. He seemed nice, so I continued talking. At the end, he was gonna introduce me to his daughter. Weird, but I thought he was joking. Then, I didn't see him again until November. Me and my friend Amir were walking to the local convenience store. Then the bearded guy saw us and called us into his home to warm up since it was snowing. His house was the house where one old man lived, so I went, because I thought he was his son. He confirmed he was the son of that man, but that he went on vacation, and he is taking care of the house while he is away. I recognized the granddaughter of the old man, so I was relieved. I thought this was just a friendly man and not some psychopath. We continued to the convenience store, and as we were headed back, we saw Amir's girlfriend, who drove us back. As we were driving, 2 police cars passed us. When they saw 3 police cars parked in front of the house of the old man was on vacation and his daughter and the 2 granddaughters stayed to take care of the house. The thing is, he had 2 daughters and no sons. That man came into their house and threatened them to pretend like they were his family. The daughter took a chance while he was out and called the police. Unfortunately, it didn't end there. Later that night, I heard bangs on my door. I saw him through the window. He was yelling something, but I didn't hear what. I called the police, but he escaped. Last month, I found out he was arrested. He was a part of a religious Salafi cult. They are unfortunately present in high numbers in Bosnia. He was framed for assault and pedophilia, married to a minor. I have now fully recovered from this traumatic event. Now, believe in what you want to believe. I don't really care. Just don't do crazy stuff like how the dude in the story did. If you don't know what Salafi is, it's basically a doctrine held by other Muslims. They place a strong emphasis on absolute monotheism and reject practices such as worshipping the graves of Muslim prophets and leaders. If you are offended about what I've read and called your religion a cult, my apologies. I'm just reading the story. Anyways, on to the next one. I think I might have encountered some sort of killer. I recently went on a date with a guy from my school who I met on a dating app. He seemed super sweet and charming over text, so I agreed to go on a date with him. Especially after 2 friends told me they knew him from a class where he was generally funny. We go to a small, pretty, prestigious university, which also made me sure that he would be normal. He was supposed to meet me at 6 to go on a picnic, but ended up picking me up at 8:30. He drove me to his apartment, and although uncomfortable, I agreed to go in because of everything I already knew about him. The apartment was only lit with 1 candle and a small glowing light on the floor, which didn't add much. It was a multiple bedroom apartment that he lived in alone, which made it even more odd. We talked and ate some food, and he seemed nervous and uneasy for most of it. He suddenly switched the conversation to our deepest, darkest secrets, and asked if I ever seriously thought about killing anyone. After I said no, he made up a story about being in the Navy and having to bomb a ship killing 5 people. When I wasn't sure how to respond, he sort of just passed it off as a joke, and said that he seriously thought about killing someone else, his ex's current boyfriend. I was extremely uncomfortable at this point and wanted to leave, and he agreed to drive me home. Before we left, he said he wanted to show me something, and pulled out a rifle that he pointed in my direction. When I got startled, he remained eerily calm and said he got it for hunting, but couldn't think of even killing an animal. We left, and I got back to my friend's place safely. Everyone I told has been flabbergasted about how the date went, and I can't shake this feeling that something was off about him, and it's creeping me out. Hey, I ain't gonna lie. That's a huge red flag, I ain't gonna lie. I survived working at the retirement home. Working at a retirement home was never my dream job, but it paid the bills and gave me something to do while I figured out my next move in life. The job was straightforward. Help the residents with their daily routines, keep them company, and make sure they were comfortable. It wasn't the most thrilling job, but it paid the bills. The residents were mostly quiet, reserved people who had lived long lives or just passing their time peacefully. But last week, I quit my job at the retirement home. You're probably wondering why anyone would walk away from such a stable gig. It's simple. I wanted to stay alive. But even now, I'm not sure if I made it out in time. Let me start. I worked the night shift. It was usually quiet. The residents were asleep by 8 p.m., and the rest of the night was a breeze. Most nights, I'd sit in the monitoring room, watching the security feeds, reading, or scrolling through my phone. That was until the weird stuff started happening. The first incident was subtle. I noticed it about a month into the job. It was around 3 a.m., and I was half asleep in front of the monitors. The cameras are showing their usual views: hallway, common area, in the residence room. Then I noticed Mrs. Carlson. Mrs. Carlson was 86, frail, with the mind slowly slipping into the fog of dementia. But that night she wasn't in her bed. She was standing in the corner of her room, facing the wall, just standing there, completely still. I watched her for a while, expecting her to move, shift, or do anything. But she stood there, like a statue. Uneasy, I decided to check on her. When I got to her room, the door was slightly open. I pushed it wider, and my heart skipped a beat. Mrs. Carlson wasn't in the corner. She was lying in bed, asleep, just as always. I told myself I must have been tired, maybe imagining things, or that the camera had glitched. But the next night, it happened again. As I sat in the monitoring room, exhausted and barely paying attention to the screens, I saw Mr. Hopkins, a former war veteran, long incapacitated, standing in the middle of his room. At first, he was just standing there, facing the camera with the same empty eyes as before. But then, he started to lean backwards, slowly and steadily, until his head was nearly touching his back. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. No one his age should be able to bend their body in such an unnatural way. Suddenly, Mr. Hopkins began to move, not with the heavy, labored steps of an elderly man, but with jerky, unnatural movements. He crawled on all fours, like a spider, slowly climbing up the wall with precise movements, almost without a sound. I jumped up, my heart pounding in my chest, unable to tear my eyes away from the screen. I knew this frail old man shouldn't be able to perform these kinds of contortions, but there he was, twisting his body in impossible ways, clinging onto the walls and ceiling with his hands and feet, moving in a frantic, unnatural manner. Then he stopped. Everything went still, as if time itself had frozen. His disordered body remained motionless, his eyes still locked onto the camera. My instincts kicked in. I knew I had to check on him. I bolted from the monitoring room, racing down the hallways to Mr. Hopkins' room, my mind reeling with what I had just witnessed. But when I burst into his room, ready to face whatever horror awaited me, I found him laying peacefully in bed, asleep, as if nothing had happened. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was horribly wrong, but every time I brought it up with the day staff, they dismissed it. Old people do strange things, they'd say. Don't worry about it. But I couldn't help worrying. The incidents became more frequent. More residents would stand motionless in their rooms at night, staring into the cameras. A cold dread washed over me when I realized they weren't just looking at the lens. They were looking straight at me, through the screen. They were everything that separated us. It wasn't just standing either. Some nights, they'd be in positions that were impossible for people their age. Standing on one leg, arms outstretched, heads tilted at unnatural angles. They stayed like that for hours, only to vanish from the screen the moment I decided to check on them. And every time I find them peacefully asleep, I started losing sleep myself. I dreaded going to work, but I couldn't quit. I needed the money, so I kept showing up every night, hoping it was all just a weird coincidence, that maybe I was just losing my mind. Then one night, things escalated. It was a quiet night, almost too quiet. The kind of quiet that makes your skin crawl. Around 2:30 in the morning, the televisions in the common area started flickering. The static buzzed, filling the halls with a low hum. I stared at the monitor, watching the static swirl on the screens, feeling dread settle in my stomach. The static lasted for about a minute before the televisions went black. And that's when I saw them. On the monitors, in every single room. The residents were all standing by their beds, staring directly into the cameras. Not just a few of them, all of them. I froze. This wasn't dementia or sleepwalking. Something was terribly wrong. Then, the cameras started flickering. The images distorted by static. And when the feed cleared, the residents were gone. Every single one of them had vanished. I jumped out of my chair and bolted down the hallways, my footsteps echoing off the walls. I checked room after room, but they were empty. The beds weren't made, personal belongings untouched, but no sign of the residents. My mind was racing. I couldn't understand what was happening. Had they all left? Were they playing some kind of twisted joke? But how could they? Some of them couldn't even walk without assistance. I was about to call the police when I heard it. The faint sound of shuffling, followed by a soft, wet noise, like something being dragged across the floor. It was coming from the common area. I hesitated, fear gripping my heart, but I had to know. I walked towards the noise, every step heavier than the last. When I rounded the corner into the common area, I saw them. The residents were all there, standing in a circle, facing away from me. In the center of the circle was Mrs. Carlson, lying on the floor, her eyes wide open, staring blankly at the ceiling. Her mouth was open too, but not in a scream. It was as if something had been pulled from her, leaving her hollow, empty. Before I could react, the residents turned to face me, all at once, their movements synchronized like they were a single entity. Their eyes were black, empty voids, and their faces expressionless. I stumbled back, my heart racing as they started to move towards me, slow and deliberate. I didn't wait to see what would happen. I turned and ran, my legs barely carrying me fast enough. As I made my way to the exit, I didn't stop until I was outside, gasping for breath, the cold night air burning my lungs. I didn't go back inside. I left my keys on the doorstep and drove home, my hands shaking on the wheel. I called the police from my apartment, told them there was a situation at the retirement home. They didn't find anything when they got there. No bodies, no sign of struggle, just an empty building. The next day, the retirement home closed down, and the residents relocated to other facilities. I didn't bother finding out where. I quit. And I've been trying to forget about it ever since, but I can't. I wish I could tell you that it was all just a story, a product of my imagination, but it's the truth. Even after I quit, the memories still haunt me. I tried to forget about it that night, but sometimes, in the quiet moments, I see them, those empty, black eyes staring back at me. I don't know where the residents went or what really happened in that building, but I'm certain of one thing. Whatever it wasn't human. Yeah, that was the end of the video. You know what I'm saying? If you guys enjoyed this video, like, comment, subscribe, share this to your classmates, share this to your school crush. You know what I'm saying? Hey, if y'all want another video, I'm gonna upload next Friday. Thank y'all for watching. Appreciate y'all for being here. Stay tuned next time, and I'll see y'all later.